Hey guys, I'm going to try and keep this video as short as I possibly can, but there's a whole lot of information here and I just can't get around not telling the full story. I want to make it clear to my subscribers that this is not content that is typical of my channel and that I have some really good videos coming up really soon, and I promise to get those edited and post those soon so that you don't have to be stuck on this video. And the only reason I'm posting this video is to do my civic duty and to put the information out there. There's nothing graphic in it, but it is heavy subject matter, so please, if you're a subscriber, feel free to skip this. This is not content typical of my channel. YouTube has already made sure that I don't make any money off my videos because I don't have enough subscribers. So the only reason I'm making this is maybe somebody out there has more information that they can give in this circumstance that can maybe tie up some loose ends. I don't know, because there's some uncomfortable things here that I discovered in my first 30 minutes of metal detecting. For the very first time. It's almost like I was led straight there. It's kind of crazy. I should also add that immediately after this happened, I did report it to the sheriff's office for that county that I was in. So without further ado, let me go ahead and tell you about the first time I went metal detecting and what I found. For a long time I've wanted a metal detector, and yesterday I finally went and bought one, and I had somewhere in mind that I've been to before, so I immediately started driving out there. I was planning on doing an overnighter. And as I was getting closer to the mountain range I was going to, I decided at the last minute to take a different route than where I was planning on going. It ended up taking me on some dirt roads that turned back up into the mountains, and I found myself in a mountain pass and came across this beautiful pullout that you can see right here. Beautiful grass, it had a nice little creek running through, some snow a little bit further back, and it was gorgeous. So I decided to stop there, and it'd be a perfect spot to camp for the night. So I pulled over, took some pictures, and then opened up my metal detector and started detecting. And I was immediately overwhelmed. When I searched, I realized that it was brass, spent brass from people shooting. I knew with all of that around, it was going to be just too overwhelming to use the metal detector. So I thought, well, maybe if I go over to the creek, I might have an easier time. And so I was scanning in the creek, and I found there wasn't nearly as many hits going on. I still found a few pieces of brass. And then I did get one stronger hit that said it was about 7 inches down. If you're familiar with metal detectors, it was giving a signal that was slightly different than some rusty nails I was finding, and also the spent brass that I was finding. I couldn't find it digging around there with my hand, so I gave up on that. At this point, it had been about 25 minutes of searching. So I continued on past the creek to the left, and I'd only gone about 15 or 20 feet more where I had a hit that was saying it was foil. So I dug down, and after about 4 inches, which I should add, the ground was quite hard because it was still late spring, and in this area the ground was semi-frozen. But I dug down, and after about 4 inches, I found this Burgermeister beer can. Nothing special, but right underneath it, there was a piece of cloth. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. I wonder if that's a bag or something. It was in an area that was completely grown over. It looked like any other area in the forest. No indications of any kind of digging or anything else whatsoever. It wasn't even on the surface. Again, this was about 4 or 5 inches down. So I thought it was pretty unusual. I kept digging, and I was tugging on it, and it was in the ground quite a bit. So I dug some more, and I unearthed about half of it. And at this point, I could tell it looked like it was some pants. And I noticed there was a bulge in one of the pant legs, and I looked in there, and it looked like there was another piece of clothing that had some red stains on it that was shoved up in the pant leg there. So at this point, I really got a little bit nervous, but still I wasn't seeing any bones or body parts or anything horrible like that. So at this point, my curiosity was still just driving me forward, and I wasn't at a point where it was something clearly wrong. So I kept digging, going a little bit slower this time because I didn't want to unearth something awful. I guess it wouldn't make it any better if I saw a little bit at a time, but this is what was going through my mind. So I was digging more slowly, and finally ended up digging a 2-foot diameter circle about 4 inches deep before I was able to pull out all of the clothing. And it ended up being the pants. It looked like maybe a gray knit, maybe suit coat or jacket, or even suit pants? I couldn't really tell. It was hard to tell because everything was still semi-frozen. And as I was pulling things apart to try and identify what they were, it was just tearing. So I was seeing what you're seeing now. These are the pictures of what I was looking at. And it had that piece of clothing, the pants. In one of the pant legs, there was a yellow shirt with a lot of little white buttons on it that had a lot of blood stains on it. And at this point, I'm going, okay, this is way sketchy. Still not super direct evidence of a crime that had been committed. And so curiosity was still driving me forward. And just past the shirt, there was another piece of clothing. I didn't see any bloodstains on that, and I couldn't tell what it was. It was super bunched up, and it was too frozen for me to pull apart. And at this point, I don't know that I really wanted to pull it apart because I didn't have gloves or anything, and I didn't really want to. It just was old and filthy and dirty. But then there was another maybe jacket as well, and then also some leather gloves that were very deteriorated. There might have been more in that hole, but that was enough for me. I was, when I first started digging things up, I was telling myself, maybe this is a big hunting area. Maybe it was just some people cleaning a deer and they got some blood on their clothing and they didn't think much of it. They just wanted to get rid of their clothing. And the more I thought about it later, I was like, you don't sit there with a bright yellow shirt while you're hunting. So it just doesn't make any sense at all. And I knew that I needed to report it. I had no desire anymore to stay in the area, certainly overnight. And I wasn't really fearful or anything. It just felt super wrong to be exposing this, probably what was a crime. And it just felt wrong to stay in the area. So I ended up just driving back home. I didn't even want to go camping in another area. It just felt wrong. So I went all the way back home. It was too late to call the police at that point, and so I decided I was going to do some research. And what I had was that Burgermeister beer. I saw the label on it pretty clearly. I had pictures of it. I knew what I was looking for, so I got on the old Google and started doing some research. And I found that this particular design of the label was only manufactured between 1961 and 1964. And suddenly this changed everything. Like, I had this really tight time frame to research further. I went to findthemissing.org. There's a national missing persons database, and I just punched in each year individually and started looking. And here are the people that I found that were kind of in the general area of where I was, within a state or two of that area in those years. So here's what I found. The first person I came across was Denise Sullivan, who went missing in Grand County, Utah in July of 1961. What happened is somebody feigned to be a stranded motorist. Denise's mom and her mom's fiance were there with Denise, and they were helping this guy out. He pulled a gun on them, .22 caliber, and demanded money. After the mother gave the money, there were some words exchanged. She turned around to go back to the car, and she was shot in the back of the head. And then he turned and shot her fiance as well, grabbed Denise, and drove off with her, and that's the last she was ever seen. Fortunately, the fiance survived to be able to report the incident and give a description of the man. The next person I found was somebody named Frank Johnson. He was washed away in a flash flood along with two other friends, and they just never found his body. The next person I found was somebody named Reed Jepson, who went missing in Salt Lake County in 1964. And he was in Salt Lake, I guess around the east bench of Salt Lake near St. Mary of the Wasatch. He was walking his two German short-haired pointers, and that's the last anybody ever saw of him. The last person I was able to find was somebody named Lillian Ritchie, who went missing from Canyon County, Idaho in February of 1964. The last time she was seen, she was driving home late from a bar in Garden City, Idaho. She had a couple of friends, and one of them was driving her back to her place, and they dropped her off. And the next morning, they went to go check on her. She wasn't home. They left a note for her. So the night before was the last anybody ever saw of her. The last she was seen wearing was this black cocktail dress and a black evening purse. And that piece of clothing was missing when they went to search her house later on. The next day I was able to get up and I immediately called the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office, and they got me in touch with the deputy who was on duty. It was a weekend, so I didn't contact the Sawtooth National Forest Office, which is what I would have contacted first off, since that's where I found it. Somewhere in the, I'm not going to tell you the exact location of where I found this stuff, but it was in Box Elder County, somewhere in the Sawtooth National Forest Range. The deputy was super cooperative. I didn't want to dig any further. I didn't want to search around anymore. One, because I just obviously don't want to see that. And two, I didn't want to ruin any kind of evidence. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just digging around. So I really appreciate the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office deputy for going out there and investigating further. He asked me to give him my email and he would contact me so I could send the pictures and video I took. I didn't hear anything back from the deputy all day, so I called dispatch and left my information again. I didn't hear anything Sunday or Monday morning, so by Monday afternoon I decided to go back up and satisfy my curiosity, since I was wondering if there was more to find. It appeared the pile of clothing had moved a little bit, and I assumed that they had been there and decided it was not worth looking into further. Things had thawed out. So I unwrapped the clothes and found that it was 3 pair of pants, the yellow shirt, part of a leather glove, several cans, and a few bits of broken glass. I didn't dig any further and left. On Tuesday, I left a voicemail with the deputy because I still didn't have confirmation that somebody had been out there to investigate. By Thursday, some of my coworkers and friends expressed their concern that more digging wasn't done by anyone and that the clothes had not been collected. Perhaps no one had been out there to look after all. I started to feel confused why I hadn't heard back from anyone yet. I didn't want to keep bothering them, but I was worried no professionals had seen anything and that the clothing was now sitting out in the open for over a week. I went into my local sheriff's office and met with the sergeant there, who also refused to look at the pictures since he didn't want to get in the middle of things, but he was very helpful in trying to reach the Box Elder deputies. We found out that the original person I had spoke with was on vacation and that his subordinate would handle my case. I quickly emailed him my video and photos and requested that he please reply so that I'd know that somebody had seen them. Again, the days passed and I still didn't hear anything. I started to make plans with a friend to go back to the same area just to camp. Finally, on Wednesday, May 2nd, nearly a week and a half after the original call, I got a call from the person that I sent the pictures to. He explained the deputy I had spoke with went to the spot the day I called and determined from his experience that they were not bloodstains. He made sure that my pictures stayed with the case number and wished me luck in my metal detecting. We had a laugh when I told him that it was my first 30 minutes of metal detecting. He figured I had been out there for 20 years or something. I still went back to that spot a third time just to camp with my friend, do some shooting, have some fun, and we found nothing further. Although we did find more clues that can link the clothes with a certain time frame. This button was off the side of one of the pant legs. It was kind of an unusual arrangement with 2 large snap buttons along the inseam close to the bottom of the pant leg. Here's the picture after cleaning it up. 2 zippers were both Talon brand, but slightly different styles. And I believe there are resources on the internet to place the time frame for these clues, but I haven't researched them. In my mind, I feel satisfied that there's really nothing more to find. Although I still can't really figure out why someone would wipe something off their hands, crumple it up, stuff it up some pant legs, and bury it in a hole in the woods. It's unusual, but I concede there's no obvious evidence of wrongdoing. Most of what had me worried about this whole episode was being left in the dark by the police for a week and a half. I really didn't want to walk away from this until I knew a professional had seen my pictures or visited the area. But I understand the Box Elder County Sheriffs have much more pressing matters to handle, and I do appreciate their time in getting back to me. Just on a personal level, I feel like this won't present me with any type of danger to me or my family. That's my number one priority, obviously. What do you guys think? Did the deputies make the right call? Is this all just a lot of excitement about some camper's trash pile? Or did something more sinister take place in those woods many years ago? Until next time, this is Derek reminding you you're working too hard.
Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.